Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we really cut through the noise and get straight to the essential, actionable knowledge hidden in the world's best research. Today, we are diving deep into what I consider, well, maybe the ultimate mastery skill for life, unlocking the hidden language of people.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. It's this language that exists, beneath and beyond just words on a page. It's written not in syntax or grammar, but in those rapid, subtle shifts of expression, in the involuntary tells of posture.
The way someone holds themselves.
Exactly. And the small, often unconscious vocal inflections and just overall behavior minute by minute. The thing is, most of us, when we talk to someone, we only listen to the words.
Yeah.
We just engage with the surface, right?
Right, yeah, just the surface. And that means we're constantly kind of confused by contradictions. You hear one thing, but you feel something else entirely. So our mission in this deep dive is really to cut through that confusion. This analysis, think of it as your shortcut to instantly understanding pretty much anyone you meet, just by decoding what's not being said. We want to give you the tools to look through that surface layer of social stuff and instantly grasp the emotional truth, the real intent of the person underneath.
And the sources we're drawing on today are pretty broad, actually. They bring together psychology and behavioral science. We're going from the really detailed science of microexpressions, those split-second facial shifts that give away true feelings, all the way up to the big picture psychology of how we form first impressions. We'll be connecting sort of hidden motives to those subtle body cues that show emotional states in real time.
And the payoff here is, honestly, revolutionary. Imagine walking into any room, any negotiation, maybe even a first date, and being armed with this ability to instantly see the whole picture, not just the edited audio track they're giving you. Once you master these observational skills, conversations just fundamentally stop being confusing. You stop guessing, and you actually start knowing. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Because before we can even train our eyes to look outward and analyze someone else's posture or how fast they're talking, the sources really insist we have to deal with the observer first, which is us. And the truly surprising point here is that understanding others doesn't start with them. It starts with our own internal state.
Precisely. That's the core concept. The mind is a mirror. It sounds simple, but it's profound. The surprising truth is that accurately understanding other people, it hinges entirely on understanding how you perceive them. Your brain isn't just a passive recording device. It's not like a security camera just taking it all in. No, it filters, it synthesizes, it interprets everything coming in, running it through these complex algorithms built from, our past experiences, our current mood, even our expectations for the future.
Ah, okay. And those internal algorithms, that's what creates what the sources call the subjectivity trap. Is that right? Because of this filtering, the exact same behavior, something you could objectively measure, can mean completely different things, maybe even opposite things, based entirely on the observer's internal state. Like we're projecting our own internal weather onto whoever we're watching.
Exactly. We absolutely are. And this phenomenon ties really closely into one of the most studied biases in psychology, the fundamental attribution error, or FAE. Basically, when we mess up or act poorly, we tend to blame external stuff, right? Oh, I was late because the traffic was terrible. But when other people do the same thing, we jump to conclusions about their character. Oh, they're just lazy, or they must be disorganized. But this trap means we're kind of wired to judge their character based on behavior that might just be a reflection of our own internal frame or our own needs at that moment.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Let's use the detailed example from the sources because I think it illustrates this trap perfectly. Think about a quiet coworker, someone who's generally reserved, maybe doesn't volunteer a lot in meetings, keeps interactions pretty professional. The objective behavior is just quietness.
Right. Quietness. Now let's imagine two different people observing this coworker. Observer A is feeling really insecure right now about their own job performance. Maybe they're worried about layoffs, or they feel threatened by how capable this coworker seems. In that internal state, Observer A looks at the quietness and sees it as distant, standoffish, cold, maybe even arrogant. They project their own insecurity onto the coworker. They're quiet because they think I'm not important.
Wow, okay. Now let's flip it. Observer B, they're feeling super confident, just finished a big project successfully, feel secure, well-regarded. They look at the exact same quiet coworker, showing the exact same quiet behavior. But now, that quietness is seen totally differently. It's perceived as calm professionalism, deep thought, maybe respect. It's seen as a positive thing, like focus, not distance.
And the critical variable there wasn't the coworker's behavior at all. It stayed the same. The variable was the observer's emotional lens. This is why the sources hammer this point home. The crucial rule, the mandatory first step before you even try to read others, is you have to consciously clear your emotional lens. You've got to move from just reacting emotionally to observing neutrally.
But hang on, here's where I want to push back a little. If I walk into an interaction and I have this deep, sinking feeling of anxiety, isn't that anxiety useful information? Isn't it telling me something is actually wrong? How do I tell the difference between a legitimate gut feeling and just a biased perception?
That's a really critical question. And the answer isn't to ignore the anxiety. You don't just suppress it, you reframe it. That feeling of anxiety is data, absolutely. But it's data about your internal state, not necessarily about the external reality. So if you feel nervous meeting a new executive, okay, acknowledge it. Right now, I am feeling nervous. But then you consciously stop yourself from immediately attributing that nervousness to the executive being hostile or intimidating. The mandatory step is this quick self-audit. Ask yourself, okay, is this judgment based on what they're actually doing right now, or is it based on my general fear of authority figures, or maybe my imposter syndrome flaring up?
Okay, so clearing the lens isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about achieving a temporary emotional neutrality for the purpose of observation. Recognizing that if I'm seeing the world through, say, a fog of anxiety or anger or even like excessive optimism, I'm seeing a distorted version of reality, one filtered mainly through my own unmet needs or fears.
Exactly. You just can't read others clearly through the fog of your own feelings. It's impossible. If you go into every interaction worried about failing, you will inevitably interpret every crossed arm, every little frown, every brief silence as proof that, yep, you're failing. By doing this self-audit first, you shift gears. You move from that instant, biased reaction to deliberate, neutral observation. And that emotional neutrality is the absolute foundation required for accurately decoding that huge 93% of unsaid communication we're about to get into.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've established the internal lens needs to be, well, clean and calibrated first. Once we're ready to observe accurately, the next question is, what exactly are we looking for externally? If we know most communication isn't actually in the words, then where is it? The source material introduces this idea of meaning flowing through three main channels. Three invisible channels, really.
Yes, and this is where we really start to shatter that common myth that conversation is mostly about, swapping words back and forth. We're talking about this simultaneous flow of human signals, all these signals happening at once that determine what we truly understand from each other.
All right, so the first channel, channel one, is the verbal. This is the straightforward one, the actual words people say, the linguistic content. And here's that famous or maybe infamous statistic that always gets people. It's the first big aha moment. Only 7%, just 7% of the communicated meaning lies in the words themselves.
And we absolutely have to add some crucial nuance here, because this statistic, it comes from Dr. Albert Moravian's work. Originally, it gets misinterpreted all the time. The 7% rule applies specifically when we're communicating about feelings and attitudes.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm just giving you raw data, like explaining a math formula or giving you directions, then yeah, the words carry way more weight. But in everyday human interaction where we're constantly signaling things like trust, intent, emotion, attitude, which is, let's face it, 99% of our daily life, that's when the words drop down to that shockingly low 7%. So that context is really essential for our listeners to grasp.
Okay, got it. So when we're aiming for that instant understanding, which is all about sussing out intent and emotion, we just can't rely solely on the words. Which brings us to channel two, the vocal channel, sometimes called paralanguage. This is about how things are said, the inflection, the tone, the pace, the pitch, the volume.
Yes, the vocal channel. And this carries a much bigger chunk, around 38% of the meaning when it comes to feelings and attitudes. It's what provides the underlying emotional context, the true intent behind those mere 7% words. Like if I say, oh yeah, I'm doing great, but my voice is really high-pitched and fast, almost frantic, that vocal tone completely overrides the verbal message, doesn't it? You, the listener, you register the anxiety, the haste, not the word great. This channel is really the engine of emotional signaling.
Yeah, or think about pace. Someone talking incredibly fast that could project nervousness, maybe defensiveness, or even a desire to dominate the conversation, right? To stop others from jumping in. But then someone who speaks with like a slow, measured gravity, maybe a lower pitch, that often projects authority, competence. The difference in just pace and tone is giving you almost 40% of the information before you even analyze the sentence structure.
Which then leaves the biggest channel of all, the one the source explicitly calls the real truth. That's channel 3, the visual channel. This covers all the body language, the big gestures, posture, how close or far someone stands, and critically, those microexpressions in the face and especially the eyes. This accounts for a massive 55% of the message.
Wow, so if you add those up, The nonverbal elements, vocal at 38% and visual at 55%, that accounts for 93% of the true emotional message. And the visual channel is supreme, you're saying, because it's the hardest one to consciously control, especially when the stakes are high or maybe when someone's feeling conflicted.
Exactly. It's incredibly hard to fake convincingly, especially under pressure. You mentioned granular science earlier, so let's dive in a bit. The visual channel includes obvious things, macro gestures like folding your arms, which, yeah, can signal resistance or feeling closed off. But the real skill, the decoder skill, is spotting the micro gestures. For example, look out for the unilateral shoulder shrug. Just one shoulder lifting slightly. If someone is verbally saying, yes, absolutely, I'm fully committed to this project, but one shoulder does that little flicker upwards, that's classic nonverbal leak. It signals a lack of real commitment or internal conviction. The truth is often in that tiny shrug.
Or what about the lips? I've read about that, like tightening the lips, pressing them together into a thin line.
That's a universal microexpression signaling frustration, anger, or some kind of concealed negative emotion. Their words might sound perfectly calm, no, everything's fine. But that tension in the mouth, it reveals an immediate internal conflict.
So the implication of this whole 93% thing, it's huge. It means if you're only listening to the words, you're basically engaging with a carefully edited story. You're missing the actual emotional reality, the intentional reality of the interaction.
Absolutely. You're missing the vast majority of the communication.
So to achieve that instant understanding we're aiming for, we have to train ourselves. We need to listen with all three channels at the same time, like a constant cross-referencing process. If a colleague says, I really respect your input, that's the 7% verbal, but their voice has that slightly sarcastic edge, the 38% vocal, and maybe their feet are angled towards the door, the 55% visual, well, that 7% becomes almost irrelevant, doesn't it? You have to prioritize the emotional and physical data over the words because that's where the real meaning, the truth, actually resides.
And this realization, this profound understanding about the 93% of communication being unsaid, it naturally leads us to think about processing speed. If these signals are so rich and complex, how fast is our brain actually digesting them? Which brings us to the first 10 seconds rule. And the time limit here is, well, it's astonishingly short.
Yeah, the research on this is incredibly consistent. Humans form a really comprehensive, high-stakes impression of another person in under 10 seconds, sometimes even faster. This is that critical window for instant understanding. And often this judgment, this feeling about someone, it's formed before the first coherent sentence is even finished or fully processed.
It's amazing, isn't it? Our brains are running this incredibly sophisticated, almost ancient subconscious checklist the moment we make eye contact or even just perceive someone. And this isn't about judging their shoes or something superficial. It's a deep evolutionary survival mechanism. It's designed to answer fundamental questions very quickly. Is this person safe? Are they competent? Are they friend or foe?
And the sources actually detail 3 specific prioritized assessments our brains run almost instantly within those first 10 seconds. We process these traits to figure out how to proceed with the interaction.
Exactly. The first one, and arguably the most crucial from a survival standpoint, is trustworthiness. The core question is, can I relax around this person? This assessment is purely focused on safety and reliability. What are the cues? Things like open, non-defensive posture, moderate, steady eye contact, not shifty, but not aggressively staring either, maybe relaxed jawline. If the signal screams safe, we instinctively lower our guard and the conversation can actually start to flow. If trust is low from the get-go, the interaction is likely to stay guarded, maybe purely transactional.
Okay, trustworthiness first. What's second?
Second is competence. Do they seem capable? This is about assessing skill, status, maybe ability. It's measured not just by, say, what they wear, but crucially, how they carry themselves. We look at the quality of their posture. Are they slumped or upright? The gravity of their movements. Are they fidgeting nervously or moving with deliberate purpose? And the control of their voice is huge here. A voice that's too high too fast or sounds breathy often signals anxiety and low confidence, whereas a lower controlled pitch tends to suggest reliability, knowledge, competence.
Right, trustworthiness, competence.
And the third one. The third assessment is warmth. Do they seem kind, approachable, maybe aligned with my interests or values? This is really the intent assessment. Do they offer a genuine, subtle smile? Or is it forced? Is there tension around their eyes? Warmth determines whether we feel comfortable enough to engage beyond what's strictly necessary. When you think about it, someone can be highly competent, totally trustworthy, but if they project very low warmth, that relationship is probably always going to feel formal and distant.
Okay, this is where, for me, this deep dive gets really interesting. Because the secret to mastering this 10-second rule isn't just about recognizing these impressions in other people. That's the passive side, just observing. It's learning how to actively control your own signals so that other people inherently trust you more and open up faster to you.
Yes. That shift from just being a passive observer to being a conscious projector of signals, it's transformative. Think about it. If you want people to share their truth with you, if you want access to decode their 93%, you must first project high trustworthiness and reasonably high warmth yourself. Because if you come across as cold or arrogant or maybe just super anxious in those first 10 seconds, you subconsciously trigger their defenses. And what happens? They immediately shut down those revealing visual and vocal channels that only give you the guarded 7%, the words. And that severely limits your ability to get that instant understanding.
Okay, so let's make this actionable. Let's give the listener some control. If someone listening needs to project competence, say, during a job interview, what specific, immediate changes should they focus on in those first 10 seconds? Beyond just, a firm handshake.
Right, it's more than the handshake. They need to focus on two things, mainly gravity and pitch, to signal competence. Consciously slow down your body movements just slightly. Eliminate nervous fidgeting. Focus on moving with deliberate intent, that's gravity of movement. And also, consciously control the start of your voice. Take a calm breath before you speak. This helps ensure your pitch starts lower and steady, signaling you're in calm command of the situation, not just reacting with nervous haste. These signals are ancient, deeply ingrained, and very powerful.
Okay, gravity and pitch for competence. What about projecting warmth? Because I think often, especially in professional settings, people accidentally project too much seriousness, which can easily read as low warmth or standoffishness.
That's a very common trap. Warmth is primarily communicated through the eyes and the smile. You need to practice what's called the Duchenne smile. A Duchenne smile is that genuine smile that engages the muscles around the eyes, the orbicularis oculi, creating that little crinkling, the crow's feet. A fake smile, or just a polite smile, often only involves the mouth muscles. So when you initiate contact, consciously try to make sure the smile reaches your eyes. That signal, especially combined with the open posture rule, no crossed arms, keep your hands visible, it sends a clear message. My intent here is positive, no harm. And that accelerates trust almost instantly.
This is great. And the source material gives a brilliant, really practical exercise for listeners to start building this muscle of instant assessment. It helps you link the feeling you get to the visual cause. This is how you move it from just being an intellectual idea to reliable intuition.
Yeah, it's a great exercise. The practice mechanism is this. The very next time you meet anyone, doesn't matter how brief the interaction, silently ask yourself this question. What 3 words describe how I feel about this person right now in these first 10 seconds? This forces you to do an immediate, deliberate, but non-judgmental emotional capture. Are the words, calm, reliable, open? Or are they maybe shifty, anxious, cold? Just capture the feeling.
But crucially, you don't stop there. That's the key. Immediately after you identify those 3 words, you have to actively observe and try to pinpoint the cause of that feeling. You need to connect that internal emotional map to the external visual signal you saw. Was that feeling of anxiety caused by their really quick pace, or their averted eyes, maybe their tight jaw, or was it that high-pitched laugh?
Exactly. That conscious linkage, that's the definition of building true intuition. Intuition isn't some kind of magic sixth sense. It's just accelerated pattern recognition. By consciously charting hundreds of these little connections, feeling cold because you noticed closed posture or feeling trusted because you registered steady eye contact, you're literally training your brain's limbic system. You're teaching it to process these signals unconsciously and instantaneously in the future. You're moving the processing from the slow analytical part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, to the rapid pattern matching emotional brain. And after enough repetition, you achieve genuine instant understanding because you've basically charted the map of human signals.
Okay, so we've covered the vital need for that clear internal lens, the overwhelming power of the 93% nonverbal truth, and the incredible speed of that 10-second assessment. This all kind of drives toward the ultimate takeaway, doesn't it? The core truth of this whole deep dive, which I think is summed up perfectly in Source 1.4. People always tell you who they are, just not with words.
That single statement fundamentally shifts the responsibility in communication, I think. If you feel confused by someone, or if they seem contradictory, the source material basically argues it's not that you failed to listen to their words carefully enough. It's more likely you failed to read the abundant, nonverbal answers they are constantly, continuously giving you through their tone and their body language.
Wow, the implication of that truth for how we interact is, well, It's massive. It means your main job in a conversation isn't necessarily to keep generating more questions, which, let's be honest, can often put the other person on the defensive. Instead, your job is to notice more answers, the answers that are already there, hidden in plain sight within the visual and vocal channels. When you shift your focus like that, from needing to interrogate to needing to observe, you kind of move from feeling like an investigator to becoming more like a true decoder.
Absolutely. And this is so critical in high-stakes situations. Take negotiation, for instance. Let's say you're negotiating a price with a client. Verbally, they agree to the figure you proposed. Yes, that works. But you notice their voice is a bit flat, maybe their shoulders are slightly hunched forward as they say it. That nonverbal data, the flat tone, the hunched posture, tells you they're likely internally resistant, even though the words say yes. Now, if you just ask, are you sure you're happy with that price? You'll probably just get another guarded verbal yes. But if you observe the nonverbal cues, you've already noticed the real answer. They're not comfortable. So your job then shifts. It's not about the yes, it's about addressing the nonverbal signal, maybe by acknowledging the price is difficult or offering some small concession elsewhere, rather than just focusing on that spoken agreement, which clearly isn't the whole story.
The truth really is living in what they don't say. Or maybe what their body and voice say despite the words. We have to train our eyes and ears to be better listeners than our sort of linguistic brain is.
So let's maybe synthesize the key takeaways now. Let's review the arc of the actionable knowledge we've covered, just to make sure these crucial points really stick for the listener.
Good idea. Anyway, first, understanding starts with your own perception, not with judgment. You absolutely must clear your own emotional fog before you can hope to accurately see anyone else. Remember that subjectivity trap and the fundamental attribution error. If you find yourself judging someone as cold, the primary data point might actually be about your own insecurity at that moment. If you're observing accurately, neutrally, then the data is about them.
Second, remember that the vast majority of meaning lives outside the dictionary. People speak primarily through their tone and their body. That's the 93%, not the mere 7% of words. And critically, if the words and the body language contradict each other, always trust the body language. Why? Because it's the hardest signal to consciously fake, especially those fleeting microexpressions.
Right. Third, respect the speed of human assessment. Those first 10 seconds reveal an incredible amount about trustworthiness, competence, and warmth, often more than 10 minutes of polite conversation will. You absolutely need to use that 10-second window to gather data, yes, but also remember to consciously project the signals like warmth and trustworthiness that invite open, honest communication from them.
And finally, circling back to that core truth, the real story, the truth, lives in what people do not say verbally. Your job, your skill to develop, is to train your awareness to notice more answers. The answers embedded in tone, pace, posture, eyes even, and especially when those answers conflict with the spoken words. This constant cross-referencing between all three channels. That's the gateway to achieving instant understanding. #tag outro.
So what we've essentially done today is hand you the keys, maybe not to everything, but to a crucial part of the operating manual for human behavior. You now understand the immense power you gain just by shifting your focus to that 93% of unsaid communication, and also the remarkable speed and depth of that initial 10-second assessment window.
Yeah, by consciously shifting your focus away from just the words and onto paralanguage and visual cues, you're effectively bypassing people's superficial defenses. You're gaining access to their true emotional state, their real intent, almost instantly. And this ability, this skill to instantly understand and maybe even predict behavior, it's truly a foundational element of high-level social intelligence.
But we need to end with one final provocative thought, something to mull over that brings us right back to where we started, that idea of the mind as a mirror. If the fundamental goal here is to see what people don't say, how much knowledge, how much understanding is immediately accessible to you right now just by becoming fully aware of your own emotional fog and its profound ability to distort the reality you perceive.
It really comes back to that, doesn't it? The biggest barrier to truly understanding the world, and especially the people in it, is almost always the observer. It's us. So maybe challenge yourself today. Before you analyze a single person's posture or tone, just take a breath. Do that quick self-audit. Check your own internal emotional state first. If you felt confused by someone yesterday, ask yourself, how much of that confusion was really coming from them? And how much might have simply been the distortion of your own lens, maybe magnifying your own fear or your own neediness? Clear that lens first, and often the truth will instantly snap into focus.